The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance, in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but some day the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age.
The Hunter's Mark plays a very important role in the Bloodborne universe and lore. In this video, that it's going to be covered in 2 sections, I want to cover some of its possible inspirations and its implication on the sequence of events that we see in the Bloodborne game. So, let's begin. We know that the Hunter's Mark contains a rune, the Hunter's Rune. And to me, this rune was probably based on the runes of the Norse mythology, specifically the Algis rune. This Algis rune, it's known as a rune that guarantees the essential link or connection with patterns of divine or archetypal consciousness, which means that it's basically a rune that's directed and related with the cosmos and higher planes of existence. And when we look at the Hunter's Mark, it says that it's an upside down dangling rune, which means that this rune exists in 2 positions, an inverted position and a normal position. And if we put this rune in a normal position and not inverted one, we see that it's a little bit similar to the Algis rune. So to me, this means that if the Hunter's Rune is put in a normal position, it looks like a man, a person that's trying to reach for the cosmos, for the sky, is extending its hands. It's also interesting that this is a recurring theme and symbolism throughout all the entire city of Yharnam. You can pretty much see it everywhere, in the statues, even in the death of important characters like Gherman and Maria. So I like to think that when this rune is put in a dangling position, it could mean the opposite. A great one that's reaching from the skies to us, to a person, to a man that was capable of getting the attention of a great one. And it's also important to consider that this mind, it's etched, permanently etched into the mind of the hunter. And this is what makes a person a hunter, because this mark establishes the connection with the hunter's dream. So we can guess that besides the inability of timing, the hunters that have this hunter's mark in its brain have some special conditions. And one thing that always bothered me was the fact that before you killed Rom and lifted the veil that he was holding, you were still being capable of being armed by the amygdalas. And to me, the veil was supposed to protect the citizens of Yharnam, or what was left of them, because it was supposed to hide these monstrosities that now reside in Yharnam. But I only realized this much later when looking at the obvious influences for this game. One of them is H.P. Lovecraft, and also Berserk, in this case the sacrificial brand. And one thing that's always mentioned in the H.P. Lovecraft novels, it's the fact that the human perception and the human mind about the world and the universe around us, it's very limited. Our 5 senses are very weak and only allow us to perceive our surroundings in restricted manners, not in their absolute and natural state. But when a door is open and we can establish a link, a connection with another reality, we become aware of a whole new existence, whole new worlds of life, matter and energy. But this could bring some consequences, because we are now capable of perceiving these realities and eventually beings that reside in these realities, and we have made our presence known to these creatures, which means that we are capable of seeing them and they are capable of seeing us, or in this case, they are capable of harming us. This works in a similar manner to the sacrificial brand. If you know Berserk, if you don't, go Google it and you will find some information, because I don't want to give any spoilers, but if you think about it, it works in a pretty similar way. And what makes this connection, this link to another reality, in this case to the realms of the Great Ones, to the cosmos, it's the Hunter's Mark. And of course, we in the beginning are not aware of the potential of the Hunter's Mark and what it represents, but it's what establishes a connection between our real world and the utter vastness of the cosmos. In the second part of this video, I want to talk about the significance of the Hunter's Mark in the game. And if you have done some research of your own and you know a little bit about the game, you know that you were basically being a servant and you were being played out by Gherman and the Moon Presence, and you were being directed to kill and annihilate other Great Ones. In this case, the one that you killed was Murgle. So you are basically a servant to the Moon Presence. And what made this binding to her was the Hunter's Mark, because first it's permanently etched to your mind, and it was put there since the beginning of the game when the messengers noticed you, because you resisted your beastly impulses. And this basically binds you to her and makes you its slave, because you are not capable of escaping the Hunter's Ring until you fulfill what you were tasked to do. So it's important to consider that this mark makes you a hunter, and especially a hunter to the Moon Presence. You are a vassal, a hunter to the Great One Moon Presence. And now we have to consider that this very mark, the Hunter's Mark, it's everywhere in the Pthumerian labyrinths, the elevators, in the tombs, in the doors, it's everywhere. And this could possibly mean that the Pthumerian society was devoted to the worshipping of not a single Great One, but possibly the most important Great One of all. To them was the Moon Presence, because her mark, the mark of the Moon Presence, it's very specific to her. And another thing that we can consider and speculate about, because in the end this is all speculation, we can speculate about Queen Yarden. We know that early Pthumerians were devoted to take care of the slumbering Great Ones, but their descendants felt entitled to name themselves some leaders. The first one was Queen Ahil, but we have no other reference of her in the game, and the later one was Queen Yarden. And we know that Queen Yarden was impregnated with a son. We assume that the father was Uden and not the Moon Presence by two simple facts. The correlation that we can also make to Ariana, she was impregnated by thin air, and also by the fact that you are many years later, after the fall of the Pthumerian society, tasked with the duty of killing another Great One. And in this case, it was Murgle. So I think that the Moon Presence wouldn't ask you to kill its own child many years later. That wouldn't make sense. The Great Ones want childs, and when their child eventually dies, because it's normal for them, they always search for a surrogate. So this leads me to consider that effectively Queen Yarden was impregnated by Uden. Of course, this is pure speculation, but couldn't this mean some kind of controversy to the Pthumerian society and Moon Presence? The Pthumerian society was devoted to the Moon Presence, but later they decide to worship another Great One and make a commitment with him, in this case, engage in wedlock. This could mean some possible conflict between the Pthumerian society and the Moon Presence Great One, or even between the Great Ones. This could even possibly mean why the Beastly Scourge was unleashed in the Pthumerian society. We know that the Beastly Scourge comes with the Red Moon. It's something to consider. So, these are the things that I wanted to talk about the Hunter's Mark and its influence in the game. You can comment in the comments if you have found any loopholes in my theories or other things that you consider when you are listening to my rant. So thank you for watching, and I see you next time.